Welcome everyone to another video, and today we're going to take a look at the move updates for the new season of Go Battle League, which has the theme of precious buffs. So this next season would be an interlude season of sort where there won't be any legend ranks. So once you get to rank 20, you would be able to get that Pikachu Libre as a reward. Of course, it is shiny locked, which is a bit sad because that's usually one of the ways where most people could get a Pikachu Libre, otherwise they might not be able to get it, but it is what it is. And let's see what the season has in store for us. So the season would be from December 3rd, 2025 at 1 PM Pacific Standard Time all the way until March 4th next year at 1 PM. So for those who are living in Malaysia like me, it will be from December 4th at 5 AM until March 5th at 5 AM. So let's look at the attack changes for this season. So in terms of fast move, is quite short. There will only be two, and the first one will be Powder Snow. So Powder Snow in this instance would have an increase in damage output of 1, which makes it a Shadow Claw clone. So a lot of Pokemon have been getting, a lot of moves have been getting this treatment of becoming a Shadow Claw clone and becoming better, which is good for the health of the game in my opinion, because at least now it has a little bit more variability in it, right? So you have a lot more Pokemon that could be used if you make your team balanced enough, or if you like the Pokemon, you might be good right now because of these move balances. And the obvious winners will be Celio, Walrein, and Alolan Ninetales. So with that extra damage, especially the shadow variants for all three of these Pokemon, it can deal insane amount of damages, especially with Celio. With Surf and Body Slam, it can get pretty spammy. Alolan Ninetales as well, and with Walrein, it has that coverage in Earthquake, so if your shields are down, you will be punished hard, especially with that Powder Snow damage ramping up. And in terms of the losers for this move update, I would think that it will be Corviknight, Cradily, and Jumpluff. So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first of all. Jumpluff, obviously being double weak to ice types, would be hurt a lot. So so for the past 2 seasons, Jumpluff has been punished quite badly, I would say. I mean, it's no longer a meta Pokemon. It's a very fringe at best, and yeah, it just doesn't look good for it anymore. For Cradily, the Powder Snow, the additional Powder Snow damage is especially beneficial at the start before you get Rock Tomb debuffed from Cradily. So I think that does make the the matchup a little bit better for the Powder Snow users, especially the Walrein and Alolan Ninetales. And as for the Corviknight, it's the same thing as well. The additional Powder Snow damage does ramp up and does deal a lot of damage in the long run. So all three of these Pokemons do lose a few matchups against our winners, and that is why they are coming out on the bad side of the Powder Snow update. So going to the next one would be Geomancy. So of course there's only one Pokemon that does have access to Geomancy, and that is Xerneas, and they had insane update where it doubles the damage output that it has now, from its fast move from 4 previously to 8. So yeah, of course the winner here is Xerneas. If your fast move is updated and double in terms of damage, there's no other way to say it, you are a winner in this update. And in terms of losers, I would think will be Lugia and Kyurem Black, for the simple reason now with the Geomancy attack buff, these two Pokemons will not be able to safely win against the Xerneas. So like in terms of Kyurem Black, before this you might need 2 close combats to take it out, whereas now with the Geomancy attack buff you only need 1 close combat. So in terms of Lugia, yeah, even though we do resist the Dragon Tail damage and they do resist the close combat coming from Xerneas, yeah, the Geomancy damage just racks up and makes a Moonblast especially more threatening against the Lugia, right? So going on to the charge moves now, the first one that we're going to look at is Icicle Spear. So Icicle Spear, what happened was it had a 5 damage increase from 65 to 70. The energy requirement still remains at 40, which means that it is good for Pokemon such as Walrein, Mamoswine, and Piloswine, the 3 users of Icicle Spear, because now it just means that they can dish out more damage, right? Because 40 energy does make Icicle Spear quite spammy, especially when all 3 of these Pokemon have access to Powder Snow, so they can reach the Icicle Sphere every 5 seconds, every 10 turns, if you want to look at it that way. So in this instance, they will be able to dish out a lot more charge move damage. So in terms of the losers, it will be Altaria, Florges, and Corviknight. So Altaria, when it had the double buff from last season, Altaria came straight into the core meta, but unfortunately with these ice buffs, like previously Powder Snow and now Icicle Sphere, I feel like it is being like brought down a peg back to reality where it's not as dominant as before. And as for Florges, I think in the Ultra League, I might be wrong, it loses to a Mamoswine with Icicle Sphere, which means that yeah, even though you can dish super effective damage from chilling water, you might not be able to get away from that Icicle Spear buff damage. And as for Corviknight, again, when you can spam Icicle Spear, a neutral, quite hard hitting charge move against a Corviknight who takes neutral damage from it, it does take a toll in the long run, especially when Corviknight usually wants to throw air cutters to get the buffs. But unfortunately, other than something like a payback or a sky tag, it does not have that much of a shield pressure or HP pressure for that matter against these 3 Pokemon. So going on to the next one, when we have Shadow Ball. So Shadow Ball is going to have an energy requirement decrease from 55 to 50, which means now Pokemon with access to Shadow Ball would be able to double up on the charge move before throwing, and this is especially crucial for Pokemon such as the Aegislash, right? The elephant in the room. Aegislash, especially in its shield form, is extremely tanky, but the drawback is that once you want to throw a charge move, it immediately changes into its sword form and becomes extremely frail. So when it has an opportunity to double up on a charge move such as Shadow Ball with that stab damage, it is able to go farm up all the way onto a max energy and then only throw the charge move, which means that they have double the opportunity to throw a hard-hitting charge move and nuke the Pokemon out the way before switching out to reset its shield form. So Jellicent and Lickilicky will also be benefiting from the Shadow Ball buff because Jellicent does not have any other ghost type stab charge move other than Shadow Ball, and this would greatly benefit it, especially in Ultra League. Same thing with Lickilicky. This will give it a better coverage, lets it spam those Shadow Ball against the ghost types faster now with that rollout energy generation. So in terms of the losers for it, I would say is Annihilate and Claydol, or in general Ghost and Psychic type Pokemons, but these 2 in general simply because they themselves do have access to Shadow Ball. Both of these, unfortunately, they will get outpaced by something like a Claydol or even a Lickilicky for that matter, right? And especially Aegislash with that crown form taking in hits before it throws those charge moves, and most probably going to take out both of the Annihilate or Claydol shields if they have both still intact. So going into the next one, we have another another ghost type charge move that is getting a sort of a rework in the form of Shadow Sneak. So it has an increase in damage from 50 to 25, so it has a 50% increase in damage output, but it does have a downside of a 5 energy requirement increase. It's a bit harder to look at Shadow Sneak as a whole as a move because there's not that many Pokemon that have access to Shadow Sneak to begin with, so it is quite questionable to see who actually won in terms of this charge move update. But in terms of the losers, I would say it would be Giratina Altered, because right now Giratina Altered only has Shadow Sneak as a charge move option that can hit Steel type Pokemons, because Dragon Claw and Ancient Power would be resisted in general. So yeah, Shadow Sneak right now does throw Giratina a bit off, especially the Shadow Giratinas that you may have stored or already built for the Great League might have a little bit less usage with Shadow Sneak right now. So the next one we will be looking at will be Foul Play. So Foul Play is a 40 energy required move with 60 damage before this, but it has a 5 damage increase, which means that it will be a little bit more viable for the dark types that have access to it, such as Sableye, Meloma, and Morgrem. I think I'm saying it right, but I apologize if I butchered the name. So yeah, Sableye now, especially the Shadow variant, will be able to spam hard-hitting Foul Play towards Ghost and Psychic type Pokemons, same as Meloma. And yeah, the less said the better in terms of Foul Play. It's just a straight upgrade, so whatever that you have been using right now with Foul Play as recommended moveset is going to be a little bit more recommended after this with this charge move buff. So the next charge move that would be updated would be Oblivion Wing. So earlier on in the video we looked at Geomancy getting a buff, and now we're going to look at the counterpart of Xerneas in the form of Yveltal. So what happened was the stats remain the same, but now there is 100% chance of a +1 increase in their own defense stat. So Oblivion Wing will of course benefit Yveltal as the only user of this move, and who got the short end of the sticks in my opinion would be Metagross and Tapu Lele. So Metagross, of course, having access to Bullet Punch or Shadow Claw, will not do super effective damage against Yveltal, but with the self-defense buff from Oblivion Wing, it does make Yveltal able to stay on the field even longer and deal super effective damage in return with those Sucker Punch fast moves, as well as Dark Pulse from the charge move side. And in terms of Tapu Lele, you might feel like it's a bit awkward, a bit weird to see Yveltal having an advantage versus a Fairy type Pokemon, but because Tapu Lele is also part Psychic type Pokemon and has access to Nature's Madness, the Oblivion Wing defense buff can counter those debuffs and neutralize its effects to great effect, but does a little bit more damage versus the Tapu Lele. So but then again, in concept, Yveltal did get an upgrade overall. Unfortunately, with this meta being heavy on steel type Pokemons and fairy types such as Zamazenta and Zacian, I don't really see how this Pokemon will be able to fare in the current Master League meta. And going on to the next one, we have Brick Break. So Brick Break, what happened was it had a 10 damage increase. So from the previously abysmal 40 damage for 40 energy requirement, which is insane. Even though it had the -1 opponent to the opponent's defense, it was horrible to begin with. And this attack buff, or this damage buff, is pretty much needed. And the winners for this, because of its limited distribution, will be Hakamo'o and the Urshifu Single Strike. For Hakamo'o, the Brick Break is especially effective to increase the damage output from the Dragon Tail fast move, and for Urshifu, it's similar to that. It does increase the damage output from Sucker Punch. And in terms of the losers for it, because Brick Break is generally weak in general, especially, and I mean, and it's still quite bad right now. It's quite hard to look at it as having a direct loser to it, because Brick Break doesn't do that much to warrant like some, or shield, for example, from a steel type or a normal type Pokemon. So yeah, generally speaking, Brick Break still questionable in terms of who would lose out from this charge move. Let me know what you think about this. Is there an obvious loser to the Brick Break charge move update? So yeah, going on to the next one, we have Meteor Mash. So Meteor Mash got a significant boost to its stats, requiring 5 less energy from the previous 50, which is insane, because like 100 damage for 50 energy was already super good with 2 damage per energy, but now it just became insane with like 2.2, right? The DPE. So all the obvious winners would be Metagross, Clefable, and Lucario. Lucario, with getting access to Meteor Mash this season, will also benefit from this. So in terms of Metagross, it just makes it a lot more viable in the Master League with those Ice types and Fairy types that are available, and it just gives it a lot more viability in terms of using Meteor Mash as a bait move for a harder hitting Earthquake against the Zamazenta or Zacian that you might see in the Master League. As for the Clefable, it will be pretty useful for it in the Great League and Ultra League to go against the other fairy types that you might see, such as Florges or Tinkaton, or even Galarian Weezing, right? Even though it has access to Sludge, but Meteor Mash just does a ton of damage against it, and it would be able to fight back with significantly more in return. And the obvious loser here would be the Fairy type, because yeah, now you will not be able to outpace something like a Florges or a Galarian. Yeah, something like a Florges will not be able to outpace to debuff a Metagross or a Clefable, because like, okay, they can outpace Metagross, but it won't be able to outpace the Clefable, because now Clefable will just need 5 Fairy Winds to spam the Meteor Mash against a Florges. So Florges has nowhere to hide in this instance, and they'll have to burn their shields to protect it. So the next charge move that will be updated will be Dragon Energy. So Dragon Energy will have a massive 10% decrease in its damage output. So this means that it would affect the only Pokemon that has access to it in the form of Regidrago. In terms of the winners, because it's quite a heavy hitting neutral damage, a neutral move for the most part, there is no clear winner in this instance, because it still does super effective against Dragon, which is the only move that that does super effective against Dragon, right? So, and the loser here would be Regidrago, because now it can't just like one tap nuke most Pokemons in the meta. Most probably you will need a little bit more charge move pressure, or even a double up to take it out. So speaking about Regidrago, there is another move that would be updated this season that will benefit Regidrago. It could be offset the Dragon Energy, but nerf will be the move Vice Grip. So Vice Grip had an insane 30 damage increase to its damage output. So from a pretty bad 40 damage for 40 energy, just like Brick Break, it had an increase to 70 damage for 40 energy, which makes it a very viable bait move for Regidrago. So Vice Grip is not a Pokemon moveset that is widely distributed. There is something like Pinsir or a Mawile that do have access to it. Unfortunately, they both have better movesets to use even after the Vice Grip update. So again, because of its limited distribution and because of its neutral nature, it's quite hard to say who would be losing out from this matchup. So in the instance of Regidrago, the Vice Grip boost and addition to Regidrago's moveset just balance out the Dragon Energy nerf, in my opinion. So the penultimate charge move update would be Spatial Ren. So Spatial Ren did have a 5 energy increase from this current season, so it will be affecting Palkia Origin form. And who are the big winners for this update would, in my opinion, be Kyurem White, because now Spatial Ren will require a little bit more time to get to it, but which means that it gives time for Kyurem White to get to a charge move to take Palkia out, whereas the Palkia now, yeah, just requires a little bit more time to get to its harder hitting charge move. Of course, it has access to Fire Blast as an alternative. Aqua Tail is mostly required for Palkia to have a cheap charge move. So yeah, Spatial Ren right now a little bit less tempting to use, so you might want to consider Fire Blast if your team requires it. It could still be viable then. So we're going to take a look at the last charge move update for the next season of Go Battle League, and it will be Parabolic Charge. So in this instance, Parabolic Charge will have a 5 energy increase required to get to it, which means that it will benefit something like Galarian Corsola or water type Pokemon that would otherwise be outbulked and outspammed by the Parabolic Charge users, especially something like Dedenne, where it has quite high attack stat and the defense buff just makes it a lot harder to deal with, right? So those are the losers. Yeah, the losers is pretty easy. All the 3 Parabolic Charges that we have in Pokemon Go in the form of Bellibolt, Dedenne, and Heliolisk would be severely hampered by it, especially Dedenne and Heliolisk. Now the charge move pacing will be a little bit different, will be a bit harder for it to use, whereas Bellibolt at least still has its bulk to counter it. At least it still has that longevity to use it with that Thunder Shock and Parabolic Charge. It might just be a little bit harder to get to it with Sucker Punch, but I think Bellibolt would be coming out the best among these 3 from this nerf. So yeah, that is the end of the updates for this season. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Am I missing anything? Who do you think will be the best Pokemon for the next season? And with that, we have reached the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.